All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you guys again for being here. My name is Austin. I'll be hosting the video or the webinar for today. Also on the line, we have Sarah. She's going to be managing any questions that come in. So with that said, if you have questions, do feel free to go down to the Q&A section, ask any questions you have there. We'll get to them. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to get my screen shared. And today's webinar is entitled Project Administration. Really, what we're going to be talking about today is vendor invoicing and customer billing. Main two things we're going to be going over. We're going to start on the vendor side and then talk about the customer side. Now, we're here in our project that we've been working on through these webinars. But I'm actually going to hop out real quick because I want to talk about the couple different places where you can input your vendor invoices. You can do it in the project level. This is where we're going to do it. I just like to point out the other one for everybody. And that would be under companies. We can go to vendors. And then one of the tabs up at the top is going to be the invoices tab. I can manage invoices here, but it's going to show me all of my current vendor invoices. I can click the plus sign and get them created from here. When you do it from this screen, it is going to ask you for the project number and commitment number. So just a little extra step you need to fill out. You'll put those two bits of info in and then click go, and then you'll start creating the invoice. If you do it from within the project, it's a little easier. You don't have to put those in, but if you have a stack of invoices that you need to enter in from various projects, it may be easier to do them from this screen instead of clicking through multiple projects. So I do always like to point it out. Also, the second option here, this can be done within the project as well, but it says there is no open commitment related to this invoice. You are able to put in non-commitment invoices, commitment being, a subcontract or a purchase order. So if you get a one-time invoice, you don't have an open subcontract for this invoice, but you still want to get it put into your system, get it put into RedTeam. Then you can click that option and it's going to ask you for quite a bit more info than you normally do for an invoice, but essentially all the info that you would put in when you create the commitment. Who the vendor is, what type is it? Here it's going to ask you what project is it going to go against. And then I could add in the cost codes and the amounts, click save, and it's going to ask me to then start creating the invoice. So that is how you can get those created from the vendor page in here. But we're going to go ahead, like I said, and go back to the project to get ours entered. So I like to do it on the project level because, like I said, it is a little bit easier because you don't have to know that project number, commitment number for each one. You can just go to the buyout tab. We have received an invoice from Able Pavement and Concrete here. We have a subcontract with them, or a purchase order, it looks like rather. We have a purchase order with them. We've received our first invoice. We can get that entered in. Right from the tools icon, I can click Create Vendor Invoice. And it's going to bring me right to the invoice creation page, where first question it's going to ask me for is the invoice number. I can type that in, whatever it is the vendor gave me. I'm just going to make one up real quick. There we go. That's going to be our invoice number. Invoice date, I'm going to call it today. Our payment terms we set up as net 30. So it's going to do the math for me and put my due date to 30 days after. So it's going to be February 26th is the due date for this one. If the vendor gave me the period ending, this is essentially, they're charging me for all work done up until this date. If they gave me that information, I can put it in. If not, no worries. It's not completely required. But I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, they're charging us for everything done up until the 20th. And then type in the invoice amount. I'm going to call it $500. And I like to always note, don't overthink this number. Whatever that invoice total is, type it in here. We're then going to apply that to the various codes, if applicable, in the next step. So whatever that grand total is, go ahead and type that in here. The description will fill in from the invoice as well, too. This was, or from the commitment rather. This was to buy concrete mix. I could maybe be a bit more descriptive here if I wanted to, but I'll just go ahead and leave that. If I received any special instructions, I could put that in here. And then this attachment area, this is where you're going to upload the actual invoice. So if they sent you a PDF or a Word document, an image, whatever it is, here's where you're going to upload that invoice. And then we'll go to the next step, which will be job costing. So this is how we're going to break up and really manage that $500 that we just got invoiced. Our commitment was broken into 2 separate line items, one for concrete mix, one for forms. And I'm going to just split it evenly. You know, we got part of our forms in, we got part of our mix in. I'm just going to call it $250 for each one. Now, whatever it actually is, we're kind of making up like the examples here, but whatever it actually is however you need to split this. Like I said, well, I'm just going to do $250 each section here. And it is also going to tell me the percentage complete as well. So $250, oh, these amounts are the same. So it's going to be 22.73% complete for each of those line items. Get that typed in, and then I can click calculate. And that's going to do the math for me for some other things here. Down below, I can see invoice to date. This is our first invoice, so it's just that $500 that we're putting in. Total retainage, we have a 10% retainage. So from this invoice, we're retaining $50, which will make our subtotal that we're going to be paying today $450. If there was tax applicable, well, there is not in our case, but we would add that tax in here, give you your taxed amount. So we have our authorized amount being that $450, and then open commitment is going to be $1,700 for this. Now, going back up to retainage, I do like to talk about adjusting it. So if you click that adjust button, you are able to adjust your retainage. The total retainage, so if this is the final bill, I could then zero out my retainage here, the percent, essentially releasing retainage at that time. The final bill, we're going to be paying for that. You do also have the option to adjust the current retainage. Total retainage is, well, the total. Current will be the retainage for just this invoice. So for whatever reason, this invoice has a different retainage on it, I can change that. All right, I'll then go to the next step here again, which will be to verify credentials. Well, this was already done when we made the commitment, but really just making sure nothing is expired in that time if possible. Looks like we require a W-9 and a license number. We have both of those things. Those are okay. Our next step will be lien waivers. Really here in step 4, we're going to list the claimants against this. In this case, it's going to be Able Pavement here. Now, RedTeam does not generate or create lien waivers. We really give you a place to store them. So I would be able to go into our lien waiver section and upload the lien waiver from this claimant here. Here in step 2 or step 4 rather, we're going to list and create those claimants for you. And then next step on here is going to be the approval step. So if I go to step 5, it'll be approval. Now, this is kind of where you're going to take a step back from it. So the invoice is created, it's ready to go, but this next step is kind of optional. It depends on how your company works. Next thing it needs to do is go through our approval system. So if I go back, it's going to bring me to the vendor invoice page where our invoice is in draft status. I'm done with it. It's built out correctly. I'm happy. I'm going to go ahead and click the tools icon and get it committed. Green text will turn to blue. And next thing I want to do with it is start sending it through our approval system. So I would click the tools icon again, and then click route. That is routing it for approval. Everyone's approval system may be a bit different. Our default one is going to be when I click route, it's going to send it to the project manager. If it's a larger invoice, after the project manager approves it, it'll go to the operations manager and then back to the project accountant. For smaller invoices, such as this $500 one, it would still go to the project manager, but then go right back to the project accountant. So I'll click route. It'll then go to the PM's inbox where they're going to take a look at it. Something I like to point out, though, if we scroll all the way over here, we're going to give you an approved on date once it does get approved, and this inbox column. I'd always like to point this out. Great information here. It's going to tell you whose inbox is it sitting in. I'm not going to actually route this, but if I did, like I said, first step would be the PM in our case. It would have PM listed here. This way I know, hey, it's been a few days. This invoice hasn't gotten approved yet. Whose inbox is it sitting in? I can see PM. All right, let me go reach out to the PM, be like, hey, when you have a moment, can you take a look at this for me? So to point out where you're going to take a look at this, if you're the PM in our case here and you get that approval notification, you're going to be able to see it right from the dashboard. Go to the dashboard. We have our inbox sitting right here where I can see expenses and approvals, or sorry, expenses and invoices. We keep those in separate sections for you. I currently don't have any invoices. So if I click on that, we're not going to see anything, but I do have 2 expenses and they're going to look pretty similar. Here's what the inbox is going to look like for invoices. But if I were to go over to the expense side, I do have 2 expenses that I need to approve. They're going to look pretty similar on the invoice page as well. I'll click review and it's going to bring me to that invoice. So let me go ahead and get back into that project so we can talk about what it will look like, what that approval page is going to look like there. I'm going to go right back into vendor invoices. So you're going to click that review button in your inbox to review the invoice, and it's going to bring it to you here in step 5, where you will be able to look back over everything. Go check out that job costing. Make sure that, if you're the PM, make sure they've actually done that work that they're billing us for, or the materials in this case. Do we really have 22% of the contract or of the concrete? Double check everything you need to double check before coming back to this page and actually giving your approval here, where I will be able to rate the vendor. So how have I liked working with them? I think these guys are pretty good. They're not amazing. They're pretty good. I can leave some comments to tell them why I think this. I can then enter in the payment if it's going to be partial or final, a waiver if we require that or not, enter the pay on date, and then I'll be able to click my approve button as the project manager. Again, for our default, for this invoice, I'll approve it. It will then go back to the project accountant to be kind of finally approved. If you are the last person in the approval system, so it's gone through all the approvals. In our case, I've been talking about the project accountant. Either way would be the final person. If you're the final person, you're going to want to check this box right here. It says execute this disbursement upon authorization, or disbursement authorization upon approval. Sorry there. Essentially, it will execute the invoice once I approve it. Now, what that's going to do is a committed invoice is committed. We can't make changes to it. It's finalized. We're getting it approved. Once it's been approved, we're going to execute it. An executed invoice is now payable. So until the final person goes in and executes, check this box when they approve it, it is going to be, or it's not going to be payable yet until we execute. So I'm going to go ahead and have that box checked and then click approve. But actually, before I do, have we had any questions so far? I know we just worked through most all the steps with the invoices.
The only questions we've had so far, Carolyn asked if we don't know the project or commitment number, how do we enter those? And I think you addressed that by kind of hopping into the project. You can search that by name if you need. And the other one, Hank just asked how he can get a link or copy of the video. Hank, I'm going to double check exactly where on our website this will be posted afterwards. So I will post the link in here for you.
All right, awesome. Awesome. So like I said, we have our checkbox on here. So we're going to execute this, and I'm going to click approve. Close out the confirmation page here. And we now have our approved invoice, or yeah, fully approved and executed invoice. So as I scroll over, I do want to point out that we have a balance listed on here. So our balance is that $450 that we authorized because we retained that $50 from them. But we don't have a paid amount on here because it's been authorized, executed, not yet paid. Once we put in the payment, that money will shift over from balance to paid, which you can easily do from the tools icon. You'll be able to click add payment or enter a vendor payment. Now, I just want to point out, we're not going to be talking about the accounting integrations today. Our system is linked to QuickBooks, however, which in that case, the vendor payment button is grayed out for QuickBooks users because that's done automatically there. But if you are not a QuickBooks user or you don't have an integration here, this button will be clickable. You would enter in the vendor payment. Really what it's going to ask for you is a check number. You can upload an image if you want to, and the amount that was paid. So I can enter that in, and then that is when that balance amount will shift over to paid.
And Austin, we've got a few questions if you don't mind pausing for a moment.
Absolutely.
We've got a few questions from Rachel, who has some kind of terminology questions. The first one being, can you explain what retainage is? She says her company doesn't use that often.
Oh, got you. So if your company doesn't use retainage, when you're setting up the commitment, it's going to ask for retainage. You can just put that in as a 0. But essentially what that is a percentage that you are retaining from each bill. In our case, we made that 10%. So if every invoice that comes in, we're going to retain 10% of that until everything's completed. So for this specific one, like I said, we had a $500 invoice come in. We're retaining $50. So we're only paying them $450. Once everything's completed, though, we're going to release all that retainage and we'll pay them that money as well.
Awesome. And then her next question was asking about what exactly lien waivers are.
Okay. Yeah. So lien waivers are essentially, I believe mechanics lien is another term for them. If I'm understanding this right, a little bit of a legal term here. Essentially, the vendors have a lien against the work that they're doing until they're paid for it. So if they aren't getting paid, or if the contractor doesn't pay them, then they do have or can get some kind of compensation for that. Essentially, the work that they're doing does belong to them until it's been paid. So if they build something there, that is theirs until they get paid for their work for it. That's my understanding of what a lien waiver is. Sarah, do correct me if I got that wrong there.
No, I think you did well. And then we just have one more, looks like one more terminology question. I think she's looking for a kind of difference between the committed status and the executed status.
Oh, absolutely. Different statuses here. So the main 3 statuses you'll see in RedTeam is going to be draft, committed, and executed. Draft status essentially means it's still editable. That's going to be indicated by green text. So when you see that green text in RedTeam, it's in draft status. You're still creating it. Once you're done creating it, you'll want to commit it. You can do that everywhere in RedTeam by the tools icon. You'll click on that tools icon and click commit. That is essentially going to lock it in. You're not going to be able to edit it anymore. You can then send it out. If it was a form like a commitment, you could then, or a subcontract, it would remove the draft watermarks off of it. So you could then send it out to the vendor to get signed. And then executed. Executed only exists in a handful of documents. Most things are fine being left committed. The commitments themselves, the purchase orders, the subcontracts, and the invoices here can get executed. Those are finalized. For the commitments, for the buyout commitments, you would execute a commitment once it's been signed. So the subcontractor and the contractor have both signed it. You can execute that commitment. You have the signed copy. You can upload that into RedTeam. Here with the invoices, the difference between committed and executed. Committed, if you're using that approval system, it can go through that approval system. It's locked in, but everyone's getting their eyes on it, making sure it looks good. The final person is going to execute, which will make it payable. So draft status, we're still working on it. Committed, we are done. We are getting it approved internally. Executed, it's finally approved. We have we're able to pay it now. All right. Any other questions before we move on from here?
I think we are okay to move on for now. The only thing I will say is, Hank, this webinar is going to be posted on the event page. So the same place you signed up, you should be able to go back and find a recording after this is done.
Awesome. All right. So once again, just don't remember where I last left off, but just to clarify here, if we don't have an accounting question or accounting integration, our next step would be from the tools icon, enter in the vendor payment. We're connected to QuickBooks, so we don't have that option. But if you are connected to QuickBooks, that would then be done on the QBO side. In a future webinar, we're going to be talking about our different accounting integrations and how they function. So something I want to show here, once you put in the invoices, this is when money is going to move on the budget from open to actuals. And actually, before I show that, before we move off of this page, from the view icon right here is where you're going to get all of your reports. Your payables aging report is going to be found here. A lot of people like to know where that report is. Very good one. It's going to be found on the vendor invoices page. But if we take a look at the budget, this was our concrete line right here under materials. We had a purchase order. We now have that $500 shown here in our actuals column. So we have $1,700 open. So we are committed to spending $1,700. We have actually spent $500. So that open amount moved from open, or that invoiced amount rather, moved from open and into actuals here. And I also like to show that you can click on these numbers to get some more information. If I click on this $500, it's going to open up with the 2 line items from that invoice, both for $250. That is where that $500 value is coming from. All right, so if there's any other questions, do let me know, but we will move on or off of the vendor side of things and onto the customer side. Which first thing I want to do with that is double check. I don't believe we've set it up already, but we need to make sure that we have our schedule of values set the way we want to. I'm going to get there from the home icon. Click on that, go to schedule of values under financial management. And we currently don't have a schedule of values. No problem. We just do need to create one here. So from the plus sign, first option I like to show is add schedule of values. This is where you can come if you want to manually create your schedule of values. Manually meaning line by line. So it's going to ask me the type. Is this a overhead, a profit, or an SOV line that I'm creating? I can then put in a description or a title here. and then a scheduled value, how much that line item is going to cost, and then click save. Now, what we're building here with the schedule of values, this is how you're going to bill your customer. This is what will show on your customer bills. So everything in here is going to show externally. You keep that in mind. So you can go through, like I just kind of showed, line by line through that add schedule of values and build out everything. Or, and what I recommend doing, at least at first, is to import your schedule of values. We created an estimate in this project, so I'm going to import my SOV from the estimate. It's going to ask me a couple questions when I do that. First one being, how do I want it imported? Off of what basis? We can do by cost code. So each code will be its own line item. By cost division. So we'll lump those codes into their division, list those division items. And then by assembly, which is those breakdowns of the cost codes. If you remember back to creating the estimate, that one will have the most detail on there. We'll go ahead and leave it by cost code. Second option, allocation methods. Essentially, what do you want to do with your overhead and profit? You have three options, no allocations. It's going to show those. You're going to have an overhead line. You're going to have a profit line. Second option, allocate indirect cost. It'll take our overhead and hide that in the other cost codes. Third option would be to allocate both indirect cost and profit. It'll take your profit, take your overhead. Like I said, it'll hide those numbers and evenly distribute those among the other cost code items or other line items on the SOV. In our case, it will be the cost codes. I'm going to go ahead and say no allocations, however, in our case. Maybe we're a little more open book. I'm fine with them seeing what our profit is on here. I could always allocate that right from this page, though. So I'll go ahead and click continue. And it's going to bring in our schedule of values from our estimate here. Now, something that I'm actually okay that this happens. We can show how to take care of this. Something that may happen occasionally is a rounding error or a rounding discrepancy we have of a penny right here. We can see we had an extra penny left over. The system wasn't too sure where to put it, so it just kind of dropped it in a rounding discrepancy line. But after looking over this, we can see our total listed right here is a penny over our contract value. We don't actually have a rounding error. I have a feeling it was one of the percentages that we did, kind of system might have got tricked. So we don't actually have a rounding error going on. So I'm just going to delete that line item, and that will cause everything to match up. There we go. So now we have that full total on the SOV matching the total on the changes, or not changes, total on the contract. Always make sure those two items match up when you're done to make sure you're billing for everything that you're contracted for. Now, I imported this from my budget, or from my estimate rather, but this may not look exactly how you want it to. No problem there, but what this really did for me is gave me a great starting point, because I still have complete editing capabilities of my SOV now. Instead of creating each of these line items one by one, I just made them all in one shot, but now I can make some changes to it if I need to. For example, one thing I'm seeing right off here, it brought in this subguard line item, but we didn't actually assign any money to that code. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. I really don't need that listed on here. Something else I could do, if I look up, we have our overhead, we have our profit, our concrete code, and these look to be different markups that we have as well. I see profit right here. I'm fine showing that. I want our customer to see this, that's okay, the type of project we're running, but I'm not a big fan of the word profit. I'm going to edit that, and I'm just going to rename it to fee. I think that's a nicer word. That's what I want to call it. Now, maybe I want to hide some of these numbers or change some of these numbers here. I could do that as well from that edit button that I just clicked. I could change the info here. Maybe I wanted to hide some of my fee or some of my overhead. Maybe I just want to show $1,000 for overhead. I could take that $173, remove it from here, put it in a different code or distribute that however I want to here. Like I said, I do have those complete editing capabilities. If there's more codes, there are more line items that I want to add, I can always click new and add schedule of values to add a new line item. Like I said, importing it gives you a great starting point. It may or may not be exactly how you want to show it at that time, but you can come in and make changes to it from here. That is about everything with the schedule of values. Did we get any questions on that?
No questions on content. Just Rachel asking if there's a way to do this side by side with a sample vendor bill. Rachel, within your database, you will find a sample project that's perfectly designed for you and your team, especially I know you guys are still in onboarding. It's perfect for you guys to go in and practice, and you can definitely put in sample vendor bills into that sample project.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, the sample project should be in everyone's database. A great sandbox for you guys to test things out with. All right, so we will move on. Our schedule of values is set. This is what we're going to be billing our customer against. So let's go ahead and start working on that bill, and that's going to be managed from the billing column or billing tab rather. We don't have any current bills. This is our first bill we're working on. So I'm going to click the plus sign here, and we're going to add a progress bill. I'm going to need to fill out our general information on this. First thing being the invoice number. By default, it's just going to be a 3-digit sequential number. We'll go ahead and leave it at 001. Billing terms, we're going to set as net 30, or we set that originally, but I could change that here if I needed to. Our billing terms are set as net 30. The bill date we're going to make as today, with that due date being 30 days after it, so still on the 26th. And then I need to select an executed by. And this is essentially going to be whose name from your company do you need shown on your bills? For us, we're just going to call it Alex here. And then who we're sending this bill to. I've kind of 3 different options of how we can do it. Either by customer contact. We're sending it directly to the customer. I can select them here. Third-party contact. Maybe this is going to the architect first. I could do that. Or we have this other option, an in care of. This is a great option if your customer is maybe going through a bank and you need to send it to them in care of someone. I would be able to type in that information here. So whoever I am sending it to, if it's not one of our contacts, I can just type them in here. But we're going to go ahead and go customer contact. We're sending this right to our customer. And looks like Mickey here is our customer. I can also CC anybody at this point. So I should select who from our contact list being CC'd on here. I can add new ones. I can do this when I go to email it as well, but you can do it right here. Also back over on the right, I do need to put in a period ending. So I need to tell our customer, hey, we're billing you for all work done up until, stick to the 20th, last Friday. I then fill out a description of work completed. And then select the remit to who they're going to be sending this to. And finally, up top here, the billing format. We have a few different types of customer bills formats that you can use. Believe our defaults we're going to have for you is the progress billing. There's also a letter format of our progress billing. And then we have 2 AIA style documents, the 702, 703s. We have the 1987 version and the 1992 version. That is the one, this 1992 version, the one that I see most commonly used. So we'll go ahead and work through it this way. Do feel free to come in here and check out the other versions as well in your system. And then as we scroll down, we're going to have the detail section. Here is our schedule of values where we're going to list out what we're paying for, or what we're billing for rather. Before that though, I do like to point out the billing adjustment options up at the top. First one, just being bill entire project at 100%. If this is the final bill, go ahead and check that box. It's going to 100% everything. You're going to be billing for everything in this last bill. You're also able to adjust total retainage from here as well. Check that box, and then you can adjust the total retainage. So once again, final bill, I can bill at 100%, adjust my retainage to 0. I want to have all that retainage released to me. And do that right from here. Also like to point out that is for the whole project. If you want to adjust retainage per line item, you could do so in the details below. And then final option here is cost plus. We're not going to fully work through it as a cost plus bill, but I do like to show if your company does cost plus, we have an option here for you. You can select the cost plus option. And what that's going to do for you is make column G here clickable, where I could then click on the line item I want to look at. So we'll click on the concrete one, for example. And it's going to open up with all of my transactions. This will be all of my vendor invoices, employee time, expenses, any transactions on the project are going to open up here. For me, I have that invoice that we created earlier, where I can choose to select these 2 line items and include it on the bill. So I'll click the checkbox next to them, click include. These are both under that concrete cost code. So essentially saying, hey, these 2 line items are costs that we have inquired during this period. Cost plus billing, it's going to be our cost plus our fee. That's what we're billing. I'll click include. It's going to add that $500 value there. And then it will attach these 2 items to the bill as well. So it will show our customer our invoices here. So if you're having a very kind of open book project, cost plus may be a good option for you if you want to show everything to your customer. Like I said, these are our costs. We're charging you this plus our fee. But I'm going to close out. So that's how you're going to do cost plus. But we'll scroll down, not using cost plus. You're going to want to either put in the percentage complete or the amounts that we're billing for. You can change this and flip back and forth per item. For example, for concrete here, I'm ready to bill. I know I want to bill our customer for concrete for, call it $800. It's going to do the math in the other column for me. That is 6.3% of our total concrete amount here. Maybe I want to bill our fee to kind of match that. So I can go over to percentages, flip that back. And for both overhead and fee, I'm going to go ahead and match that, like I said. So 6.31, that's going to be $74 for overhead. And then keep that same 6.31 to come to $87 of our fee. Like I said, just an option, just an example to show you can flip back and forth between amounts and percentages and fill this out as you need to. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave those 3 items in here. I could obviously go through and fill out, add cost to everything listed. But this bill is going to come to $961, and we're 3% through this project. Now, before I move on to the next step here, do we have any billing questions?
No billing questions at the moment.
All right, beautiful. So we will go next step, which is tax. If this is a taxable project, a taxable bill, I could enter that in right here. These options below the tax are going to come from your tax venues. So if we have a 5% GST tax, I could select that and do that here. If we're not using tax, just have no tax selected. We can go on next step from there, which would be attachments. If I want to upload any attachments to this bill, here's where I could do so. Remember, if you use cost plus, that those invoices are going to be attached automatically to them. Final step will be this confirmation page. We'll go ahead and close this out. So it's going to create the bill for me. It's created in draft status, indicated by the green text. So again, it's still editable. I can click that pencil icon and I can continue making changes to it. I didn't actually finish going through the whole schedule of values. I need to work on something else. I'm going to come back to it and finish it in a minute. No worries at all. Exactly what this draft status is for. We're finished with ours though, but just to go over a few of the different columns here. So we have our billed amount. So our billed amount, we are billing our customer $961. They have a 10% retainage. So they're going to be retaining 96 of those dollars. So we're really only going to receive 86 or $865 from this bill. And we have that same received amount in our balance here too. So we're ready to go with this. I'm going to click the tools icon and commit. That's going to remove the draft watermarks off of the page. Turn that green text into blue. It's now locked in. I'm not going to be able to go in and edit that amount anymore. So let's use the paper icon. Go take a look at this. It is that AIA style document. We have our application and certificate for payment up top. The contractor's application for payment below. Next to it would be the architect certificate for payment. And then at the bottom, we're going to show that full detail, that schedule of values with the numbers that we plugged in here. So we're charging $800 for concrete, $74 for overhead, $87 is our fee. And then at the bottom, we're going to total everything for you. So from the top up here, I can click email this out to our customer, to the architect. Maybe I'm sending it to them. Whoever this is going to, be able to email that to. I could also CC anyone from there. Click on that. We're billing Disney for this, our customer. Alex is being CC'd on there. I could click CC, select who else I want to send it to. Same thing with the to-line before clicking email, and it's going to send that document out. And just a note, if you are integrated with DocuSign, this is a document that you can send via DocuSign as well with the Send with DocuSign button. All right, so we have sent out that bill. Really all we're waiting for now is for our customer to review it, for it to get all signed, and then we will receive our money. Once we receive that money, similar to what we talked about with the vendor invoice, we're going to come to the tools icon and we're going to add a customer payment. Once again, we're not going to be talking about our accounting integrations too much today, but we are connected to QuickBooks here. So this customer payment option is grayed out for us. If you're not connected to anything, you'll still have that option. But if you click add customer payment, it's really just going to ask you, for a check number, what account is this going to, and the amount received. So if you type in that amount, whatever it was, we'll assume it was the full amount, that full $865.30. Once you commit that payment, that money will move from your balance to your received area. And then I also like to point out here from the view icon, you're going to have your receivables aging report. So payables aging can be found in the vendor invoices page. Receivables aging will be found under the customer billing page. All right, and that is everything for the vendor side of invoicing, and also kind of everything that I had planned for today for this session. Any questions that we have?
I don't see any questions right now, Austin, but I did want to read out a definition from an earlier question. Rachel, when you asked what lien waivers are, we did get a good definition from Christina, who's our accounting specialist. She says a construction lien waiver is a legal document signed by a contractor, supplier, or any other entity contributing to the construction of a property, which states that they release the lien or claim on the property and they have received payment from the property owner for services rendered. So hopefully that gives you a little bit cleaner definition, but please drop in the Q&A if you still have any questions there.
Absolutely. And then I didn't show, so I'm glad we did bring that back up, where to enter those lien waivers. So once again, RedTeam doesn't generate those. It's a very legal document that we just don't create inside of RedTeam. We do give you a place to store them. And that will be in the buyout tab from the manage icon. You can go to your lien law claims. We have the Able Pavement listed as a claimant now because we have that feature turned on for us. But I can click the plus sign here and I can add a document. So once we receive that lien, that the lien has been released because they've been paid, I can add a document and select that and upload it here. So we'll add it to Able Pavement. We received it, what form it was, the dates, the amounts, any notes I want to add to it, and here's where I can upload it. Once again, no kind of creation options we have with that, but we do have a storage system for it. So you can keep those organized and in one place. All right, but like I said, that was everything that we had for today. If there is any other questions, do feel free to type those in. We will leave. I'll kind of leave things up and running, leave things open here for a minute. So if we get any questions coming in, but if not, do feel free to head on out for today. And if there's no questions, we'll be closing up in a second. Thank you all for being here today and look forward to speaking to you guys at our next webinar.